Welcome to Reali, the show for teens, by teens, about teens. I'm JK, and I'm not kidding, and I'm your host. Today we'll be talking about internships, the difference between student internships and jobs, and the benefits that come from them. Today I am joined by my sister Kathleen Larkin and my cousin Tyler Sands, who both have quite a bit of experience with internships. Kathleen, Tyler, thanks for joining me. Now, we are talking about internships today, and both of you, Tyler, especially you, have had tons of experience with internships. So I want us to start off by just having each of you talk about what experience you have with internships, how you found the internships that you're currently in, and what you've learned from having them. Tyler?
Well, thanks for having me, JK. So I started my first internship last summer. I was a communications and brand management intern at a medical device company called AngioDynamics, which is in the Albany area of New York. So it was a good experience. I got to see how a company worked. And honestly, I think for any internship in a corporation, that's where both of mine have been, I think the biggest thing an intern can get out of it is seeing how the company works and seeing how different departments work. So at AngioDynamics, I mainly worked with the marketing team, with the brand management team, and with the communications manager. So we would write press releases, we would come up with marketing material, and we would look at material that's shared throughout the company. And in doing that, we also we saw how other departments work, such as the HR team. I had to do some assignments for them. I even got to meet the legal counsel, and I got to see kind of what he did for the company. So that's my first position. This year, I'm a channel development intern at Nestle Waters North America over in Stamford, Connecticut, and that's definitely been a good experience as well. We're kind of a sales support team of sorts. It's kind of a long story to explain, but it's been good. We've learned even more about the company so far. We're doing a mini MBA program, actually. So we get to take accounting classes. We get to take lectures on things like business analytics. And on the finance team, we've had the CFO already give a couple of speeches to us. So we've gotten, and it's also about meeting people, internships. When you're in college, or even when you're in high school, meeting people is very important. You want to network with people, and if people know your name, that's important to you getting a job. Getting a job it's very competitive today. And if you know somebody who knows somebody, you might get that job over somebody else.
Exactly.
So, yeah, there are certainly lots of advantages to having an internship.
Definitely. Like I said, he has tons of experience with internships. Now, Kathleen, you just started your first internship about a month ago, right?
Yes.
Let's hear about it.
I'm an intern at the NGO on Migration. It's one of the non-governmental organizations in direct relation with the United Nations. So my group, as the NGO on Migration, is dealing with the refugee crisis. So through my internship, I got it because I did Model UN with my college. I was on the team, and I competed at the National Model United Nations international competition in New York City. So when I realized that I was interested in the United Nations and international affairs, I decided to look into something for the summer, and I got the position. Basically what we do is I've learned a little bit about the functions that work within the United Nations to make it operate, on the global level. So the General Assembly is very different than the Security Council and vice versa with other subdivisions. So my group as a nonprofit organization is raising money, raising awareness, sending our profits overseas to deal with what's going on in Europe currently.
That's awesome. I'm glad to see that both of my guests are well prepared. Now, the first thing that we have to talk about when discussing student internships is exactly what an internship is. Now, I think that both of you did a pretty good job of explaining exactly what the companies that you're interning for, what their goals are, what their objectives are, and how you found out that you were interested in them. But what is an internship overall? Kathleen, looking at this definition, they're saying an internship is an opportunity offered by an employer to potential employees to work at a firm or for a fixed limited period of time. Now, that sounds a lot like what you're doing at the UN right now, but what are some things that your internship might offer that aren't included in this definition?
Well, I think specifically for the UN or any other government group, not everybody who interns there is particularly interested in becoming a diplomat or an ambassador or anything, specifically involved with what the United Nations does, but maybe to get a better handle on what it does, learning about it. Like if you're interning with Congress, it might not necessarily be because you want to get involved, become a congressman. It might be because you just are interested in your country and seeing how it operates.
Okay, so finding an internship that fits you isn't just about what you might want to be when you grow up, but also just what you might be interested in at the time.
Right, broadening your horizons on a certain topic or an area of interest.
Yeah. Now, Tyler, Kathleen happens to be involved in a government-based internship as compared to your two internships that were with companies. How do you think that an internship through a company differs from a government internship?
Well, I mean, I can't completely speak for Kathleen's experience, of course. I can imagine there are similarities and there are differences. Obviously, we're learning about two different things. I don't know how similar the United Nations would be to working at a corporation. There are obviously many differences and I'm sure some similarities as well. But I think probably the biggest similarity is that we meet people in different fields. And that, I noticed, I'm sure you're going to ask me what my take was on this definition. Yeah, and this definition's absolutely correct, but the one thing that it doesn't necessarily describe is how meeting people is one of the core parts of an internship, whether you're working in government or whether you're working for a company. So it's something that we'll both get from our experience, hopefully.
Definitely. Now, you said the take on this definition isn't exactly what you would say, but you do see the similarities between government and company internships. Now, what is one benefit that you think you could get from a company internship as it pertains to that specific company, like possibly getting a job at that company after your internship expires?
Well, it certainly might help with getting a job at that company if you want to work in that specific field, and certainly getting to know different people at the company, having different references, or even having a mentor is very important. But it's not just about that. That shouldn't be your number one focus, to work at that specific company. You should look at the big picture more. So the big picture is getting experiential learning, which you just simply don't get in colleges. Getting to work for a business and getting to see what managers do in order to manage their teams. And that's, you don't want to look at an internship with that focused a view, because then you might be missing the whole point.
Okay. Now, both of you have done a very good job of explaining what an internship is, especially with regard to both of the fields that you guys are interning at. But what exactly are the benefits of an internship? Now, we've got a short little list here of some possibilities. You guys quickly look them over. Learning more about your field, both of you explained how interning at Congress might help you learn more about Congress, whether that's an interest or an aspiration of you. Applying knowledge learned in the classroom, yes, possibly getting a job. Yours is through your college, your Model UN class. And gaining valuable work experience, as at a company you'd be able to see how a manager operates. Now, looking at this list, is there any other benefit that either of you have either witnessed already or have been promised at your internships that isn't possibly listed, but you could definitely see benefiting you?
Just looking at the slide here, I think all of them could certainly apply. I'm not sure with you, obviously, but to me, certainly. You obviously learn about your field or your industry. Unless you're not paying attention or something. This one is important. This one's really important. This gets back to what I was saying about experiential learning. Because again, in the classroom, you do a lot of academic work. You learn things, depending on what your field is, obviously, you learn history, like past things, not just in a history class, but past events. You learn to analyze certain things, whether you're in a math kind of field or even in humanities, you analyze text, but you don't necessarily. It's different from how a company actually works. With a company, nobody. It's weird. It's like nobody holds your hand while you're doing work, and it doesn't matter what the grade is. You do your best work and you get the job done, and that's the difference. And the other knowledge you get from a company is, again, you see how the company operates. You see how people interact with each other in the workplace, which I could tell you is very different from how people at my school, St. Lawrence, or I'm sure at Marist as well, or many colleges, how they'll interact. It's a different environment. College is like it's a bubble. It's a utopia. The workplace, you're in the real world. You get a job, you're thrown in there with people that have been there for a while, and it's you do your job, and that's just, there's less leeway than there is maybe in an academic environment too.
Okay, so that's a good comparison between what you're learning in the classroom and exactly what you are doing at your internship. Now, Kathleen, you being someone who is interning for the government at the UN, someone who clearly has shown an interest in foreign relations, being a member of your Model UN team at college, how do you think your internship could help you decide if that's the right path for you?
Well, it's kind of interesting because in the Model UN class that I took, or even on the team competing and going down for the conference, it's so different compared to what we do. And I've learned that as soon as I started interning there, that it's completely different. On the team, you're representing a country, you're representing their interests, you're given a topic, and your country has to, debate with others to come up with a resolution that will benefit your member state and any other member states that are working with you. And it's almost like, Model UN, the class and the club, is a simulation above all else. It's not real. If they give me Japan, I'm not really Japan. But when I'm interning at the United Nations, I am representing the United States. And when we're on conference calls with, the other branch of our team in Geneva, Switzerland, we're the United States and they're Switzerland, and we're talking to each other country to country, and it's real. It's real life. It's something that's so much bigger than you. And it takes what you learned out of the classroom, which seemed so small and so sheltered, and brings it onto the, real global stage. You feel like you have more of an impact that way.
Definitely. So being an intern at the United Nations, you get to see not only a simulation of what the UN could be like, but real diplomats doing something much bigger than themselves, seeing exactly if that's the right path for you. Definitely. So these are some of the benefits of an internship. Now, our next topic is the difference between an internship and a minimum wage job. Now, in the summer months especially, also during winter break for college students, many people have the decision between an internship or some type of job, whether it's minimum wage or low wage, you never really know. I know that this summer, for myself, I will be doing 2 jobs instead of an internship. However, my 2 guests here are doing internships. Now, I would like to hear from 2 people who are doing internships what they think are the benefits of doing an internship over a job, as 2 people who have both had lower paying jobs before. Kathleen?
Well, I think if you're doing an internship, it gives you more of an opportunity to do something in your field directly. Like with the United Nations, doing an internship, I'm a political science major, and that's something close to home. It's close to my studies. Whereas if I got any college student job, like working as a waitress or working in a supermarket or something like that, it's earning money, but it's not pertaining to what I'm studying. It's not relevant in what I'm hoping to do with myself in the long term.
Okay, that's very fair. How about you, Tyler?
So just looking at this, there's no doubt that you also, working with others is something that is a skill that you get from just getting a minimum wage job. And also internships have stereotype that the interns are basically just there for the position, and what they do in reality is, get coffee and make copies. It's a huge stereotype. That hasn't really been my experience at either position I've had. Especially, Nestle has been great. They've had learning programs for all of the interns, and we've been very fortunate for that. And there's no doubt that you are better prepared for what you might be doing in the real world in internship than if you were, depending on what your minimum wage job is. Some might be more relevant than others. So that's, and the other thing, that's fortunate, and this has been fortunate for me in both of my internships, but as well as for others, and more companies are doing it. But companies are starting to at least give stipends or even pay by the hour their interns. And the reason for that is to bring in more potentially, useful workers into the company, because interns can have an impact on the company. And there might be somebody very smart out in the real world that might want an internship, but if it's unpaid, they might have to take the minimum wage job for financial reasons. So, and that's why companies are starting to do this. And also, even if the company's internship is unpaid, schools will oftentimes, or other organizations even, might give stipends to or grants to students, and they have to apply for that, but they might get $3-5 depending on the grant. But the financial issue is starting to become less of one than people might think, which is cool.
That's great. Yeah, well, Big Shot over here has had 2 paid internships and he's only 20 years old, but we can't all be as lucky. Well, here I have 2 more possible differences between internships and minimum wage jobs. Now, luckily, as Tyler pointed out, not all internships are unpaid, and if you are lucky enough to have a paid internship, that might actually pay higher than most minimum wage jobs. But these are 2 more possible benefits of an internship over a minimum wage job. Answer from a university professor: I know that many universities actually have their student internships through their colleges, so those professors that might be part of a Model UN type of course might be able to help their students get connected with a UN internship of sorts. Now, the second point we have is the good advice as to why you should take an internship over a job. Now, many jobs are very good jobs. They might be, as Tyler said, in the right field for you. But if your job isn't necessarily in the right field, is it really worth it to be, flipping burgers at McDonald's or doing an internship for the UN if you want to actually be a diplomat one day when you grow up? Now, what do you guys think of these 2 points, especially the first one, connecting it through your college? Kathleen, did you have any college help when your professors were looking for internships for you, or did you find your internship on your own?
I actually found my internship on my own, but I probably wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been involved with Model UN at my school. That was what piqued the interest to, for me to go pursue that type of internship.
Okay, so sometimes your college class might the influence of your college class might be all that you need to push yourself towards an internship. Tyler, have you had any help from your college professors as to getting internships? Did you find them on your own, or did your college help influence what you were looking for?
Not my professor per se. I was lucky in that I was able to find the internship on my own. But and in terms of this quote, I would say the professors write with it generally, especially with the access to grants and whatnot. If it's obviously a tough call for students if their financial situation is an issue. But part of what college is today, because college can be, a huge price. Sometimes it could be, well north of $200,000 for all 4 years. Before financial aid and scholarships. But education, whether in the workplace here for an internship or in school, it is an investment on your future. It's a human investment that you make. Looking long term could result in you being in a better position, X amount of years from now, which would be a very good thing for you. So long term planning is important for sure.
Definitely. Now, I know that both of them, since they just said so, were able to find their internships mostly on their own, although Kathleen did have some influence from her Model UN course. Here are 7 tips to help landing an internship, since we both just discussed why an internship might be more important than a minimum wage job over the summer or over Christmas break. Now, landing an internship, I assume, does take a lot of work. An internship is something that, as both of you have mentioned, is a lot of pressure that they are putting on someone very young. Most internships are by people under the age of 23. So, tips to landing an internship when you're 18 or 19 years old could be the biggest benefit that you could possibly need. So our first tip is to double and triple check your resume. Now, usually when you're an intern and you're 18 or 19 years old, you don't really have that much on your resume. So what are some ways that you could possibly help stack your resume in your favor? Tyler?
Well, I mean, it obviously depends from person to person, what you've done in the past. Obviously, if you've been involved in activities at school, if you're on this team or if you're involved with drama, if you're the head of whatever club, those obviously help for getting that first internship. And and a tough thing for getting an internship is a lot of companies say, oh, well, we want you to have a past internship. That's very preferable. So it's very tough to get started. That's why getting to know people in life that could help you is very important. And obviously format is important on your resume too. That can really go a long way. If you have, if you don't want your resume to look like you put it together in a few minutes, or even that you worked on it for just a day and then you sent it out. You want it to look like it's a document that you've spent some time on. That goes a long way. And also, and I don't believe you have it here. I mean, it's similar to the resume, but having a LinkedIn page, the social network, that's very important because just as Facebook is a personal social network, LinkedIn is a professional social network. You can build your professional brand just like on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything the kids are using these days. You use just like there, you build your personal brand. You build your professional brand on LinkedIn. And as soon, no matter who your employer is, as soon as they find out that you applied, guarantee you that unless for some reason they're so turned off by you, they will look on LinkedIn to see if you're on there. Obviously, the first step is having one, and then having a nice picture, having a good headline. Those are all very important things. So, for sure.
So a good LinkedIn account is sometimes what will push you over. Now, Kathleen, I know that you, having parents who are very big on on public speaking, you would very much be well inclined to do well in an interview, correct? So, what are some tips that you could give our viewers on delivering your A game at an interview?
Well, I suppose coming prepared is the number one thing. Know what position you're going for, what your job is going to be asking of you. You may not know your hours per se or what benefits you're getting right off the bat. That might be something that you're waiting to hear about. But learn as much about the company or the organization that you're interviewing for as much as you can, so that if they ask you any questions, you won't ask a stupid question. That's what I'm trying to say. You won't go in and ask them something that's going to be on the front page of their website. It'll show that you didn't care enough to give it a look before you got there.
Okay.
Besides that, I guess, make sure you eat, make sure you go to bed early the day before. You don't want anything to give any indication that this was something you kind of decided to do last minute. You want to look nice, dress professionally. You don't come in dressed in a t-shirt and slacks. That's not what this is about. You're trying to portray a professional image of yourself the same way you would on a page, but in person, you want to give that same impression as well.
Okay, so just like you're putting in time on your resume, you're putting in time with the company.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Now, our last slide for the day is 8 tips for new interns. Now, Kathleen, you just started your first internship about a month ago.
Yes.
Tyler, you explained how your first internship was last summer. Now, these tips for new interns, Tyler, you might have experienced these when you were having your first internship. Kathleen, you might be even experiencing them now. So let's take a quick look at them. Number 1, you need to be on time for everything. Now, I know that in the theater world, they have a little quote that says, early is on time and on time is late. I assume this is probably the same in the professional world. Kathleen, you want to explain?
Yes. Being
Yes.
late is the worst possible thing you can do to yourself.
Don't be late. That's
Whether
good
it's
advice.
a meeting, if you're just showing up for the day on the job, it looks really bad, it looks untidy, don't do it.
All
They'll
right.
remember it.
Don't be late. Yeah. Social graces are sometimes more important than ability. I could see that being important. Do any of these stand out to you, Tyler?
Oh, I mean, that one that you just said, social graces are sometimes more important than ability. You could be the smartest kid in an internship that there ever was. I mean, you could be a really smart, and ultimately very effective worker. But if you're rude, if you are arrogant, the thing that's the worst actually, if you show up for an interview or on the job itself, if you come in like you think you're better than everybody, or at least you think you're on their level totally, and you give off that vibe everywhere that you go, that's going to hurt you. You need to learn. Manners are very, very important for sure. And the rest of these ideas are certainly very good. They're good tips for new interns, I got to tell you.
Definitely. All right, now we've got about 2 minutes left now. Kathleen, do you have any advice to give new interns that might not be shown here? Or did we pretty much cover it all?
I mean, it looks pretty much covered, but just to put more emphasis on what Tyler said, if you go in and you have to accept right off the bat, if you're an intern, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. You just are. And that's perfectly okay. If you're a college student, if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you're probably one of the youngest people in the room. You have to accept that everybody there has been working in that field longer than you. They probably know more than you do. Sure, you might have a fresh new idea, but you can't go in there and act like you run the place. It's just not, that's not the case at all. And the earlier you realize that about yourself and the earlier you understand the reality of your position as an intern, the better off you'll be.
All right. Tyler, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess, you obviously want to be confident in the workplace, but you don't want to, you never want to be arrogant. You also, and this isn't necessarily being arrogant, but you don't want to necessarily come in with the assumption that you'll change the stock price or you'll make a deal between countries in some way if you'll facilitate that whole thing. You are an intern, and you're there to learn, and you're there to meet people, and you're there to do your job. And you want to be a sponge. You want to take in as much information as you can. You don't necessarily need to change the company, but you need to take in as much as you can and help where you can, for sure.
Definitely. All right. Today we've discussed internships, student internships, the difference between an internship and possibly a summer job, why internships are important, and even some tips for new interns. Kathleen, Tyler, thanks for joining me. This has been Reality. Thanks for watching.